weekly press briefing of the Kosovo Specialist Chambers, where we aim to provide journalists with an update on the latest developments at the court and the opportunity to ask questions. In the case of Hashim Thaçi, Bashkim Smakaj, Fadil Fazliu, Isni Kilaj, and Hayreddin Kuçi, concerning allegations about the illegal influencing of witnesses, the Specialist Chambers of the Constitutional Court on 5th of February dismissed a referral by Mr. Thaçi. Mr. Thaçi had claimed that the assignment of a single judge who authorized special investigative measures and the subsequent assignment of the same judge as pretrial judge was not in accordance with the law, and therefore that it violated his right to have the criminal charges against him determined by a tribunal established by law. He further claimed a violation of his right to respect for private and family life. The Specialist Chambers of the Constitutional Court dismissed the referral, finding it premature, given that at this stage of the proceedings it is not possible to determine whether Mr. Thaçi's fundamental rights have been violated before there is a final judgment in the case. The Chamber further found that Mr. Thaçi had failed to provide any example or detail as to how the measures had violated his right to privacy, and the Chamber declared the claim unsubstantiated. In the same case, on the 10th of February, Bashkim Smakaj and Fadil Fazliu were provisionally released in Kosovo subject to conditions following the most recent review of their detention by the single trial judge. In his decisions of the 3rd of February, the judge found that circumstances had changed since Mr. Smakaj's and Mr. Fazliu's detention were last reviewed in December 2025, and he found that their detention was no longer reasonable or proportionate. While the judge found that there remained a moderate risk that both Mr. Smakaj and Mr. Fazliu would, if released, obstruct the progress of proceedings, he concluded that these risks are outweighed by their fundamental right to liberty. The judge considered, among other factors, that the time Mr. Smakaj and Mr. Fazliu have already spent in detention now exceeds the statutory minimum sentence each of them would face if convicted. In line with international fair trial standards and the Kosovo Constitution, accused persons may only be detained before a conviction when judges determine there are risks justifying detention. For each detained person, judges reassess every 2 months whether such risks still exist, whether they could be addressed through alternative measures, and whether continued detention remains necessary and proportionate. In the trial of Hashim Thaçi, Kadri Veseli, Jakub Krasniqi, and Recep Selimi, closing statements are taking place throughout this week. The specialist prosecutor commenced their statement on Monday morning, finishing on Tuesday. Victims' counsel delivered their closing statement on Tuesday. The defense of Hashim Thaçi began its closing statement yesterday in the morning, followed by the defense of Kadri Veseli in the afternoon. The Veseli defense continued their statement today. After this, the defense teams of Recep Selimi and Jakub Krasniqi are scheduled to deliver their closing statements. Defense submissions are expected to continue throughout this week and into the beginning of next week. After the trial panel closes the case, the trial panel will start its confidential deliberations. The judges will carefully assess the credibility of witnesses, the reliability and weight of the testimony of witnesses, and they will assess each piece of evidence. The accused are presumed innocent unless the prosecution proves their guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. In the same case, the trial panel decided to extend Hashim Thaçi's detention following the judge's latest periodic review of whether detention is still necessary and reasonable. The trial panel assessed, based on the relevant standard, that there is a sufficient risk that Mr. Thaçi will obstruct the progress of Specialist Chambers proceedings and that he will commit further crimes against those perceived as being opposed to the KLA, including witnesses who have provided evidence in the case and/or who may be called in parallel proceedings. Among other considerations, the judges recalled their previous findings that it appears that Mr. Thaçi provided non-privileged visitors with information elicited during the testimony of protected witnesses and/or discussed instructions to be passed on to witnesses about the form and content of their testimonies. The judges also took into consideration a, quote, persistent climate of intimidation of witnesses and interference with criminal proceedings against former KLA members in Kosovo, which, quote, protective measures alone cannot overcome. Finally, in the case of the enforcement of Haji Shallah's sentence, the KSE president decided to modify his sentence and provide for his release under conditions set forth in the decision. Mr. Shallah was released and returned to Kosovo this week on the 10th of February. In her decision, the KSE president cited, among other factors, that Mr. Shallah had shown some signs of rehabilitation and sent a letter in which he expressed his regret to anyone who may have suffered harm as a result of his actions. As a reminder, Mr. Shallah pleaded guilty to obstructing official persons and to intimidation during criminal proceedings, and he was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment. Proceedings related to commutation, modification, or alteration of sentences are individual proceedings. When a convicted person has served 2/3 of his or her sentence, they become eligible for consideration of commutation, modification, or alteration of sentence. But they do not have the automatic right for the sentence to be commuted, modified, or altered. That's all of the remarks I have. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
After Wednesday, when we can wait for the final decision about and
Okay. Thank you very much. And for anyone on the Zoom that might not have heard, the question was when the final verdict can be expected in the Thaçi, Veseli, Salimi, and Krasniqi case. So closing statements are expected to finish by Wednesday of next week. After this, the judges will close the case, and then under the rules, they have 3 months or 90 days to deliberate and reach a verdict. If the circumstances justify it, this can be extended by 2 more months. So 3 to 5 months from the closing of the case, which is expected next week.
Can we have last word before 90 days?
In theory, yes. The rules stipulate that they have to reach a verdict within 90 days, unless there are special circumstances. For example, hypothetically, if a case is more complex, then they can have an extension of 2 more months. But this is the maximum. So, of course, a verdict could come earlier, but I wouldn't speculate about exactly when.
Another question. What can you say to the citizens of Kosovo who said that this court is political and unfair? So many words said that this is not unfair for the Thaçi and the others.
Of course, thank you very much. It's important to emphasize that the Kosovo Specialist Chambers is a neutral organ, that it's the prosecution that, based on their investigations, brings a case, and then it's the job of the judge, first the pretrial judge, to confirm or not confirm that indictment, and then it's the job of the trial panel to listen to both sides, to the prosecution, and to the defense and to the victim's counsel. It's up to the judges to carefully assess each piece of evidence in light of all of the arguments and all of the evidence, and then on the basis of the law to reach their decision. So all I can say is that the Specialist Chambers has been established with some of the best practices of other tribunals in mind, in line with the law adopted by the Kosovo Assembly, and the judges are focused on delivering fair and impartial trials. Thank you. Are there any other questions before we conclude? All right, thank you very much. Bye. Sorry, should I remain? No. Thank you. Yes.
Can I have it or just
Absolutely, yeah. It will take maybe 1 hour. My colleague is